looking at this code for reference, I do see what they're doing to get the texture chords. So we're going to take the size of the texture, right? And let's try to like just... so I'll be referencing that code over there, but so you might not see me referencing it, but I am referencing it as I am writing over here. Boy, this can be quite tedious. Right, so we're inside this if block here. It looks kind of dirty and hard to keep track of, but looks like we need to -1 from the size. That makes sense because if your texture is 64 pixels wide, you have coordinates 0 to 63. So so we'll say is it just a normal vec? Well, I guess we could probably yeah, let's just kind of transcribe from the texture coordinate. Well, technically, if we want to, that would be texture coordinate, right? Because coordinate is 2. Let me check here. So text cord, do we have a... Okay, well, if we're not using that, I guess we'll write it like that. Okay, so we have the texture coordinate, and that's going to equal the... Let's see, and where is this VT? Input vec S and T. What the hell is S and T? So is that taking the... Are we taking the pixel on the... looks like we're taking the vertex coordinate. Yeah, so the input pixel... yeah, so this input here, which is the vertex color. So you have the position... Oh, yeah, so that's more like frag color. This is GL position equals... Do we have access to GL position in here, or GL position F GL position GL position GL underscore position. So looking at the vertex shader, we have a GL position, and then it's not referenced in here. So we want the texture coordinates. I'm looking at this code again. We want the texture coordinates, I believe. So let's look at V and then ST. So we have this out, VST. So we have the position, and then we have the texture coordinate. Oh, okay. So, so this actually has more information than what I have. I have because I'm using colors. Yeah, because I am using colors, and they are float values that I'm using for the colors, and I did make it so that red maps to X, and then yellow maps... So red maps to X, and then Y maps to green. So in my... So I don't have position and text chord, I have like position and color, but I could use the color as the text chord location. So I might want to make a note of that in this code really quick to say that, you know, that this color here is that an out? That's it. Layout. Okay, vertex position, vertex color. GL position. So we have an in, and then we have a out. So this is the pixel, and that's like the vertex color. Use this as just gonna make, because you mapped, and then maybe we'll want to change this to not be so horrible later, but let's just get it working first, and then we can maybe add another piece of information for the texture coordinates. Rather than, so have like the S and T coordinates somewhere, rather than just kind of like co-opting the frag color for this, because he mapped red to x-axis and green to y, thus S equals x equals red, and then S and T, so equals y equals green. Red, green, and blue. So this is kind of like what I'm doing. So this is why this can be thought of as the texture coordinates. And we might want to address this later and not be so hacky, but right now we just want to get this working, and we can address it. We can address fixing it up a little bit better later after we just get stuff working, right? Because right now we don't have any working code, and we want to get our code out of a broken state as quickly as possible. So it's this pixel fragment thing right here, and so that's out. Okay, it's the pixel and the vertex, because we're coloring the. Really, we're coloring the vertices? Hold on. Those values would be normalized, I believe. Pixel equals, no, because that's the vertex color. So we use the color for that. And we started at black. And we mapped the black at the top. Top left. So we're probably gonna get some inversion going here, right? So we could to fix our shader code, we could just invert how the colors are mapped, and then we have a nice visual feedback knowing everything's working correctly. So I do kind of like using the vertex color here to kind of like figure things out. So this is kind of annoying, like why am I doing this? So out, because why do I have vertex position, vertex color, and then the pixel for the vertex is kind of what I'm guessing that's called. Pixel. Let me see if I have that in my pixver means. What does that mean? Pixel value in vertex shader. Okay, so that makes sense. The pixel value in the vertex shader. Sure, why not? And that's the output parameter. And then we're going to use this as our texture chord as well. So when we're looking at some other code that uses it as text chord, we might want to make a little note that other code may call it text chord like that. So when we look at other code, we can say, oh, that's what other code uses this for. So then, yeah. Okay, so yeah, and then if we're not doing anything with texture sampling, we just kind of return the input without modifying anything. Otherwise, we're going to use that input for texture sampling. And we'll get the texture coordinate. And okay, so now let's look at the texture coordinate stuff. So the texture coordinate equals the size times the input. All right, so we're normalizing. Aren't we normalizing it? Yeah. Times right, because this is 0 to. This has been normalized to 0 to 100, and then we're multiplying by the size, but also when I look at the source code, the size also has a -1. So this code here isn't, like, functionally, yes, it's kind of clear, except for size is not -1. That would, size would more be like max index if you're going to -1 from each value. That's going to be the max index on the x and y, and so this would be the input coordinates times maximum x and y indices. So that's, I don't feel like that is quite written correctly, judging from what I'm seeing there. So we'll try to write it a little bit more correct by taking this. And really all it's about is taking the -1 and moving it from the top line, like in the source that we're looking at. The -1 is up here, but the -1 really should be down here, because this variable in their source code is the size variable. Okay, so now we have this text coordinate thing, and then what are we doing with it? So it looks like it's definitely a vec2 type, and then we have text chord, and then we have chord, and the chord is an integer. So this is like so we could call this, well, if we have text coordinate, and that's just coordinate, we could call this int coordinate, you know, like if we want to keep with like a constant naming here. So ivec2, and then we'll call this one int chord. And all that is ivec2 of the text chord. And now with this integer coordinate, we can do the texel fetches. Yeah, so we can just do the texel fetches, and RGB, float 0.5, vec4, texel fetch. Okay, so then I believe we're gonna do like a r equals texel fetch, and then this memory object, the texture, and then the integer coordinate, because that's what it needs for the texel fetch, and then I believe the last parameter is the LOD. And if we look at the texel fetch, yeah, we have sampler, an ivec2 position, and the LOD. Okay, so if we take that, and then we just gotta oh, and that's really a that's a vec4. So really we have I don't know, we have, you could say that's a vec4, and it's we could call it, wait, so it's sampling, and then it's not, texel fetch is not giving us an ivec. Oh, wait, no. subtract. Oh, so you know what? Maybe because it's yeah, I don't know, because that's a text. So maybe the textile fetch is not what I want to be using for integer textures. Large delays of data and texture. In WebGL, you could do that, but you would only adjust the textures with texture coordinates by pixel from a texture by pixel / textual coordinates, making okay. So the textile fetch means that we can supply integer coordinates when we're fetching. And it looks like the textile fetch takes x and y. Yeah. Yeah, so it takes IVEC2 for that position. And so you don't have to... Okay, yeah, and so I'm going to guess because I'm using an unsigned integer sampler that, so I'm just looking at this code again. So it looks like because I am using an unsigned integer sampler, my code is going to be a little bit different. So I am fairly certain that we need like an IVEC4, and we have the integer RGB. We could call it color, but then that's very you know what? I don't like the COO for coordinate. Why don't we, since we haven't really set ourselves into coordinate and then color, that still looks very similar. Text coordinate. We could do that, and then, yeah, no, we could keep that. Text coordinate. Integer coordinate, which is just taking that, and then the int color, but maybe we do RGB like that. It's not just RGB, it's RGB and A. We'll just assume that RGB also usually includes an A at the end. I guess we could do that, maybe. Or do we want color? Oh, I know. We'll be assholes. We'll say hue. There we go. And now these look different enough. So technically hue is an RGB. Let's see, hue definition. Hue definition. So hue doesn't include like the lump and saturation, right? Yeah. So that's not very accurate. That's right, because you have the hue and then the lum and the saturation. So that's bad. Here I am, taking forever to come up with variable names. But yeah, that looks way too similar. Visually similar. Integer, we'll just call it, int RGBA. We can call it like that. And now it's a little bit ugly, but now it's definitely more distinctive than these. Sure, we'll do that. So, int color, and then int color, and int color, and int RGB, int RGB, int RGB. All of those kind of variables names that I'm thinking of, they're all gonna map, all these kind of names, they're just gonna map to int RGBA, and then we'll have int RGBA. If you spell it correctly like that, then you'll get like a little check mark. What the hell? Hold on. And if you don't spell it correctly, like you do int RGB or or int RGB or int RGB like that, or maybe int dash RGBA or int underscore RGBA, or yeah, or any of those combinations. It will correct you to say int RGBA without a space. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, we've kind of made our decision on what that variable name needs to be, which took me forever. Looking at the source code, we don't have our Texel fetch in there anymore. And this is going to be called isomem, right? And is that declared at the top of the shader? Where the hell is it declared? I see the comments. Oh yeah, uSampler2D. So that's a uint sampler. Therefore, we should be able to get our integer values rather than float values, because we want our integer texture, and we'll just call it isomem as the sampler name. Okay, yeah, so let's try that Texel fetch. So we're going to try the Texel fetch, and then the ISO memory, which is the isolated memory, and then our integer coordinate, right, because it's IVEC2, and then a 0 for the LOD, right? Okay, cool. And after that, we have IVEC4, but when we want to actually put it into the R, G, and B values that are actually going to be outputted, those are floats. So then we have to do, I think we can just do float, and then we can do, so this is going to be ugly, but we just want to get something that we can work with. So dot x, and then y, and x, y, and z, right? Yeah, x, y, z, and then it's like w. X, y, z, and then w is for the alpha. But we're only concerned with this r, g, and b. And then right here, we're going to assign it. So if that all is correct, we should get something now. I'm not totally confident that I haven't made any type of like syntax error. So we are going to see when we run this. I've done a lot of stuff that I'm not sure of. And usually even when I'm sure about things, I still get syntax errors. So now I'm very unsure about how this is going to end up. But we'll see, and hopefully we can correct any problems when they arise, because I just feel like something's going to happen here. Okay, let's look at this. Shader oh boy. Int to... Okay, so we're like converting integers to floats. We're like mixing types all over the place. There's so much stuff going on here that I don't even know how to fix all of this. Like, I think the best way to fix this is we just have to start commenting stuff out until we figure out like where the first offending line is. And I think if we're careful about this, we can just start here, and that should be enough to get like the gray color I'm expecting. So let's refresh. No dice. So what do we have now? Oh, and that's because we commented out the line that's actually going to assign that. So let's keep that. Okay, so now I'm going to refresh. Okay, so we're getting somewhere here. So we got that little gray box, and now I'm just gonna add another line and see if it goes away. Okay, so we made a syntax mistake somewhere. Cannot convert from high p, a two-component vector of int, to high p, two-component vector of float. So I'm mixing vector and float is what it's saying here. And we're trying to get the texture size. So my assumption here is that texture size was a float. But maybe I don't understand that correctly. So let's look at where we do the texture size, diffuse 0, and Uniform sampler 2D. Maybe there's a eye texture size, maybe, possibly. Because I'm using integer texture, maybe I need to use like, because texture size is assuming like a float sampler, but I'm not using that. So let's try that. So let's say eye texture size WebGL. So I'm just searching to see if maybe there's like an eye texture size. So texture size, int texture size, int ivec2, integers. All these texture sizes are giving out ivecs or integers, but it's all ivecs. So where we're messing this up? Where are we messing this up? So it says we're getting ivec. So a vec2 would definitely be improper there. So why the hell is this code saying just vec? So maybe is there a cast on the texture fetch? Or the texture size? Oh, they're doing a cast in the source code. I didn't pay attention to that. So this would be ivec2, and where do we need it? We need it here. To get that texture core, which is going to be like a float. Yeah, that's going to be a float, so that would make sense that we would want a vec2. Because, so if we do vec2, and this is getting out of hand, so let's, take this and